He left his pregnant daughter on Christmas Eve for a younger, glamorous model. He thought he was trading up, but what he didn't know was that the woman he threw away was a billionaire heiress. 1 year later, the same woman he humiliated in front of the world walks into the spotlight, powerful, untouchable, and he realizes too late what he lost. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about revenge, patience, and poetic justice. You won't believe how it ends. Stay till the end. You'll love every twist. And if stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything. The ballroom glittered like a constellation had fallen to earth. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across Manhattan's elite, their champagne flutes catching the glow like tiny stars. A string quartet played something elegant and forgettable in the corner, while waiters in crisp white shirts glided between clusters of designer gowns and tailored suits. Sarah Whitmore stood at the podium, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other gripping the microphone. At 36 years old, 8 months pregnant with her second child, she radiated the kind of confidence that money can't buy, but suffering can teach. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. The Whitmore Foundation's expansion into affordable housing represents more than just an investment. It represents a promise that wealth should build communities, not just portfolios. Applause rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the back, a man in an ill-fitting suit stood frozen, his face drained of color. But that's not where our story begins. To understand how Sarah Whitmore became the woman at that podium, we need to go back exactly 1 year. Back to a modest townhouse in Seattle, decorated with twinkling lights and false hope. Back to the moment when everything she thought she knew about love shattered like that champagne flute about to slip from the hand of the man who destroyed her. Back to Christmas Eve. The tree lights blinked red and green in the corner of the living room. Sarah had spent the afternoon making sugar cookies shaped like snowmen, their frosted faces smiling up from the cooling rack. At 7 months pregnant, bending over the counter had made her back ache, but she'd wanted everything to be perfect for their last Christmas as a couple before the baby came. She was setting the table when she heard David's key in the lock. The door opened, and her husband walked in with rolling suitcases. A woman Sarah had never seen before followed him inside. Sarah's first thought was that they'd been traveling. Maybe David had brought a colleague home unexpectedly. But the way the woman's hand rested possessively on one of the suitcases, the way David wouldn't meet Sarah's eyes, sent ice crawling up her spine. "David?" Sarah said slowly. "What's going on?" David Sterling, 40 years old and handsome in that generic corporate way, set down his suitcase with deliberate care. He'd been her husband for 8 years. She'd fallen in love with his ambition, his drive, the way he'd seemed so certain about building a future together. Now he looked at her the way someone might look at an old car they were trading in. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said. "Actually, no, I'm done talking. I'm done pretending." The woman stepped forward. She was younger, maybe 28, with that carefully curated Instagram aesthetic. Perfect waves, perfect makeup, perfect outfit chosen to look effortlessly expensive. "Hi," the woman said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Amber Sinclair. I'm sorry this is awkward, but David and I have been together for 6 months now. We're in love." Sarah's hand went instinctively to her pregnant belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her mother's distress. "Together," Sarah repeated. The word felt foreign in her mouth. "David, what is she talking about?" "Pack your things," David said, his voice flat. "Amber's moving in tonight. This is her house now." The room tilted. Sarah gripped the edge of the dining table. "Her house? David, this is my house. My name is on the deed." "Community property, babe," David said with a shrug. "My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything. And honestly, you should thank me." Sarah stared at him, the man she'd married, the man whose child she was carrying. He looked like a stranger. "Thank you." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "For what?" "For taking you this far. Let's be real. You were a grad school art teacher when I met you, living in that shitty studio apartment with the radiator that barely worked. I built this life. I made you Mrs. Sterling. That's worth something. Amber pulled out her phone and started filming. Moving into my new place, she said to the camera, her voice bright and cheerful. Christmas miracles are real, you guys. Hashtag new beginnings. Hashtag blessed life. Sarah watched this happen as if from very far away. The cookies on the counter, the tree lights blinking. Her husband's face, cold and certain. The stranger filming her humiliation for social media. David pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Divorce papers, he said, holding them out. My lawyer says you have 30 days to sign. I'm being generous. I'll let you have $50,000 and you can keep your car. But this house, the furniture, our investments, that's mine. Well, ours now. He put his arm around Amber's shoulders. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. The text message read, your father had a massive stroke, St. Vincent's Hospital ICU, critical condition. Come now. My father, Sarah said, her voice breaking. He's dying. David sighed. Sarah, I'm sorry, but that's not my problem anymore. You need to leave tonight. Amber's parents are coming for Christmas brunch tomorrow. Wait, Amber said, looking up from her phone. You're making her leave on Christmas Eve? She turned to David with an expression of delighted shock. Babe, that's so badass. Sarah stood there, 7 months pregnant, hand on her swollen belly, looking at the man she'd loved, the man who'd promised to love her in return, the man who'd just thrown her away like garbage on the most sacred night of the year. She could tell him, right now. She could say the words that would change everything. But she didn't. Instead, she walked slowly to the bedroom they'd shared for 8 years. She pulled her suitcase from the closet. She packed her clothes, her photos, the few things that were undeniably hers. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and she whispered, I know, sweetheart, I know. When she returned to the living room, suitcase in hand, David and Amber were already rearranging furniture. At the door, Sarah turned back. You're right, David, she said quietly. He looked up, surprised. Finally, some gratitude. Thank you for showing me exactly who you are. I'll sign the papers. You win. David's smile was triumphant. That's the smartest thing you've ever said. Sarah walked out into the snowy Seattle night, alone, pregnant, heartbroken. But she was also Sarah Whitmore, and David Sterling had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The red-eye flight from Seattle to New York felt endless. Sarah sat in coach, cramped and uncomfortable, her pregnant belly pressed against the tray table. Every time the plane hit turbulence, panic fluttered in her chest. Not for herself, but for the baby. The baby who would never know the life they were supposed to have. The baby whose father had just thrown them both away. She'd booked the ticket on her teaching salary credit card, $287 she couldn't afford. But her father was dying, and despite everything, despite 15 years of silence and resentment, she had to see him. St. Vincent's Hospital loomed gray and imposing in the pre-dawn darkness. Sarah checked in at the ICU desk, gave her name, and watched the nurse's expression shift from professional sympathy to something else. Recognition, maybe, or surprise. Room 412, the nurse said softly. Ms. Whitmore, your father's attorney is already here. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Whitmore. She hadn't used that name in 15 years. To David, to everyone in Seattle, she was Sarah Bennett, her mother's maiden name, the name she'd chosen when she walked away from everything at 21. William Whitmore lay in the hospital bed, pale and still, tubes snaked from his arms. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring a heart that had built a real estate empire and broken his daughter's spirit. A distinguished man in his 60s stood from the chair beside the bed. Sarah, he said, I've been trying to reach you for months. Hello, Richard. Richard Moss had been the Whitmore family attorney for 40 years. He'd been at Sarah's mother's funeral. He'd been there the day Sarah's father remarried, just 6 months after burying his first wife. He'd been there when Sarah changed her name and walked away. I didn't think he wanted to hear from me, Sarah said, moving to her father's bedside. Your father's been following your life. He knows about David. He knows about the baby. Richard paused. He updated his will last month. Sarah's hand tightened on the bed rail. I don't want his money. It's not about wanting. The Whitmore Trust automatically transfers to you upon his death or incapacitation. $2.3 billion in assets, commercial properties in 12 states. You're the sole heir. The number hung in the air between them. 2.3 billion, with a B. His wife, Sarah said, Patricia, is explicitly excluded. She gets a $5 million payout in the Hamptons house. Everything else is yours. But Sarah, there's a legal complication. Of course there was. Richard opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. California community property law. Any assets acquired during marriage are split 50-50 in divorce. If your father dies while you are still legally married to David and you inherit, David could claim half of your inheritance as marital assets. We're talking over $1 billion. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, the weight of it crushing her. But I'm filing for divorce, she whispered, which takes 6 months minimum to finalize in California. Your father could pass any day. If he dies before your divorce is final, David wins the lottery. Outside the window, the sky was turning pink. Christmas morning. Somewhere, families were opening presents. Children were laughing. People who loved each other were holding each other close. What do I do? Sarah asked. Richard sat across from her, his expression grave. 2 options. 1, renounce your inheritance. Walk away from everything. 2, delay the divorce. Keep David legally bound to you until the trust transfers safely into pre-existing accounts that predate your marriage. But that means 6 months of pretending to be the poor, pathetic ex-wife while secretly managing a billion-dollar empire. Sarah looked at her unconscious father, the man who'd chosen a trophy wife over his grieving daughter, the man who'd let 15 years pass in stubborn silence, the man who was still trying to control her life from a hospital bed. But he was also the man who'd apparently been watching her from afar, who knew about her marriage, her pregnancy, her life, who'd made sure she was taken care of, even when they weren't speaking. How long do I have to wait? She asked. 6 months minimum. We need to establish that these trusts existed before your marriage. Transfer them to offshore holdings, then bring them back through your pre-marriage identity as Sarah Whitmore. The paper trail has to be bulletproof. So I have to stay Sarah Bennett Sterling for 6 more months while David parades his new girlfriend around? Yes, and you cannot access any Whitmore money during that time. 1 transaction, 1 luxury purchase, 1 slip, and David's lawyers will find it. You have to stay poor. Sarah almost laughed. The billionaire who has to live in an extended stay hotel. The billionaire who's smart enough to wait, Richard corrected, as if reading her mind. Sarah stood and walked to the window. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks rumbled past. Early morning joggers braved the cold. Life continued, indifferent to personal catastrophes. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it to find a photo. David and Amber, wrapped in blankets on the couch, her couch, with her throw pillows, in her living room. The caption read, "First Christmas in our new home. So blessed." The pain in Sarah's abdomen started as a cramp. Then it intensified. Then it became a wave that stole her breath. Sarah. Richard stood quickly. Sarah, what's wrong? The baby, she gasped. Something's wrong with the baby. The emergency room blurred into a chaos of lights and voices. Premature labor. 33 weeks. Too early. Too fast. They rushed her into surgery. Emergency cesarean section. Sarah remembered thinking, absurdly, that David should be here, that she shouldn't have to do this alone. Then she remembered that David had chosen to make her do this alone. The anesthesia pulled her under, and when she woke, the world had changed. You have a son, the doctor said. 3 pounds, 12 ounces. He's in the NICU, but he's fighting. You can see him soon. Sarah lay in the recovery room, body aching, heart shattered, watching her tiny son through the glass. He was so small, impossibly small, covered in tubes and monitors, but alive, fighting. A nurse brought her phone. 57 messages, none from David, but 3 from Amber's public Instagram account, tagged with Sarah's location. Photos of her and David celebrating Christmas, opening presents, toasting with champagne. To new beginnings, the caption read. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. Sarah blocked the account. Then she opened her email and found the divorce papers David's lawyer had sent. Attached was a note. Sign these promptly. Every day you delay costs my client money and peace of mind. She could sign them right now. Be done with this nightmare, or she could wait. Ms. Whitmore? Richard stood in the doorway, still in his coat. Your father woke up this morning. He's asking for you, and he signed the emergency trust documents. The clock has started. 6 months from today, everything transfers to you. But until then, I'm nobody, Sarah finished. Exactly. Sarah looked at her son. The baby David didn't even know had been born. The baby she'd carried alone through humiliation and heartbreak. Tell the lawyer I need more time, she said. Tell them I'm recovering from emergency surgery. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. But I'm not signing anything for 6 months. Richard smiled grimly. Understood. Can I ask what you're going to do during those 6 months? Sarah's expression hardened. I'm going to let David bury himself. The extended stay America in Bellevue smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's microwave dinners. Sarah sat on the edge of the double bed, pumping breast milk with a machine that whirred and clicked in the silence. Through the thin walls, she could hear a television playing game shows and someone's bass-heavy music. Her son James slept in the portable crib beside her, home from the NICU for 3 days now, still so small, still needing special formula and monitoring equipment that beeped if his breathing became irregular. Her phone buzzed, another Instagram notification. She'd stopped blocking Amber's account because knowing what they were doing felt somehow necessary, like pressing on a bruise to make sure it still hurt. This time, it was a TikTok video, Amber giving a house tour. So, welcome to my new place, Amber chirped, panning the camera across Sarah's living room. Except it wasn't Sarah's living room anymore. The walls had been painted stark white. Sarah's bookshelves were gone, replaced with ring lights and a backdrop wall covered in fake flowers. We completely gutted the previous owner's boring teacher aesthetic, Amber continued. David's ex had, no sense of style. Everything was beige and cluttered. Now it's my content creator studio. The camera focused on Amber's face, perfectly made up, expression dripping with false sympathy, and honestly, I think I did her a favor. She clearly didn't appreciate this space. Now someone who understands aesthetics can make it shine. The video had 2.1 million views. The comments were worse than the video itself. She upgraded. The first wife was giving library vibes. This is what happens when you don't prioritize your appearance. Sarah closed the app and set the phone face down. James stirred in his crib, making the little mewing sounds that meant he'd be hungry soon. Sarah finished pumping, stored the milk, and lifted her son carefully. He was so light, so fragile, so completely dependent on her. It's okay, she whispered, settling him against her shoulder. We're going to be okay. But she wasn't sure she believed it. By the end of January, Sarah had established a new routine. Mornings, she taught 2 art classes at the community college. Afternoons, she worked at a craft store in Kirkland. Evenings, she took care of James, counted her dwindling savings, and watched David's life improve while hers fell apart. Her apartment was a study in careful poverty, generic diapers, store-brand formula, furniture from Facebook Marketplace. She drove a 2008 Toyota Corolla that made concerning noises when she accelerated too quickly. Every purchase was calculated, every receipt saved. Richard had been clear about the rules. She had to be demonstrably struggling. If David's lawyers ever investigated and found unexplained wealth, the entire plan collapsed. So Sarah Whitmore, heiress to $2.3 billion, bought her groceries with WIC vouchers and clipped coupons like her life depended on it. Because it did. Ms. Sterling? Sarah looked up from her desk at the community college. A student stood in the doorway, hesitant. It's Bennett now, Sarah said automatically. She'd started using her maiden name again, even though legally she was still Sarah Sterling until the divorce finalized. What can I help you with, Jessica? I just wanted to say thank you for the extension on the project. My mom's been sick, and I've been helping take care of her, and I just really appreciate you understanding. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed in weeks. Of course, Family comes first. Take the time you need. After Jessica left, Sarah sat alone in the empty classroom, surrounded by student artwork. Watercolors and charcoal sketches and clay sculptures in various states of completion. This had been her life before David. Teaching, creating, finding beauty in simple things. She'd been happy then. Her phone buzzed. Richard calling. "Sarah, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine," she lied. "Your father wants to see you. He's doing much better. Physical therapy is going well." Sarah hadn't been back to New York since James was born, couldn't afford the flight, couldn't take the time off work, couldn't risk David's lawyers noticing she was traveling. "Tell him I'll visit when I can," she said. "He understands. He also wanted me to tell you that he's proud of you. What you're doing. He knows it's not easy." Sarah's throat tightened. "It shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't have to live like this when there's money sitting in accounts with my name on them." "4 more months," Richard said gently. "You're halfway there." After he hung up, Sarah allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry. Then she washed her face, picked up James from the college daycare, and drove her rattling Corolla to her shift at the craft store. David's promotion came through in February, vice president of marketing, $220,000 a year. The Seattle Business Journal ran a profile piece. Sterling credits his success to his partnership with lifestyle influencer Amber Sinclair, the article read. Together, they've built a brand around modern luxury and authentic living. Authentic living. Sarah read that phrase 3 times before she could move past it. The engagement announcement came next. Seattle Times, lifestyle section. A professional photo of David and Amber on a beach. Golden hour lighting. Her hand extended to show the ring. "Sterling Sinclair, a modern love story," the headline declared. The article gushed about their whirlwind romance, their shared values, their excitement about building a future together. No mention of David's pregnant wife. No mention of Christmas Eve. Just a carefully crafted narrative about 2 beautiful people finding true love. Sarah pinned the article to her refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. She looked at it every morning while making instant coffee in her cramped kitchen. Remember, she told herself, remember exactly who they are. In March, Amber's Glow Up series went viral. A string of TikTok videos documenting the house transformation. Video 1. Point of view, he finally chooses the woman who matches his ambition. Side-by-side photos. Sarah in mom jeans and a cardigan. Amber in designer athleisure. Video 2. When you realize he was just settling. A tour through the house, pointing out all of Sarah's mistakes. Too many books, too many plants, not enough clean lines. Video 3. Before and after, from frumpy to fabulous. The bedroom makeover. Sarah's cozy reading nook replaced with a minimalist design. Her artwork taken down, replaced with motivational quotes in generic fonts. Each video had millions of views. Each comment section was a knife to the heart. She did him a favor by leaving. The upgrade is insane. First wife, literature. Second wife, legacy. Sarah watched every video, read every comment, let the hatred fuel her resolve. She also documented everything. Screenshots saved in a folder labeled evidence. Not for court, for herself. So she'd never forget. So she'd never doubt that what she was doing was necessary. In April, Sarah's breaking point came at Walmart, 11 p.m. on a Thursday. She stood in the pharmacy aisle, James strapped to her chest in a worn baby carrier, staring at the feminine hygiene products. The name brand postpartum pads she needed were $14.99. The generic brand was $9.47. She had exactly $12 in her checking account until her craft store paycheck cleared on Friday. 2 young women walked past, talking loudly about their weekend plans. Bottle service at that new club downtown. That designer bag one of them had been eyeing. Whether $300 was too much for a pair of shoes. Sarah bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. Her phone rang. "Richard," she answered without greeting. "I can't do this anymore." "Sarah, I'm standing in Walmart at midnight because it's the only time James sleeps through shopping. My C-section scar still hurts when I bend over. I'm trying to decide if I can afford the good postpartum pads or if I need to buy the cheap ones that leak. And my ex-husband just posted Instagram photos of him and his girlfriend at a Michelin star restaurant in Bellevue. 2 more months, Richard said. 2 more months of what? Humiliation, poverty, and watching him live my life with someone else? 2 more months until you never have to be this person again. Sarah laughed bitterly. What if I just take the 50,000 and walk away? What if I sign the papers and let him win? You could, Richard said. But then David wins, and Amber wins, and every woman who's ever been called not enough loses. I'm not doing this for other women. I'm doing this because I'm tired of being stepped on. Good. Anger is better than despair. Use it. Sarah bought the generic pads. She drove home in her rattling Corolla. She fed James and put him to bed and sat alone in her dim apartment, eating ramen and looking at the Seattle skyline through her window. Somewhere out there, David was sleeping in her bed, in her house, living her life, but not for much longer. David Sterling had never felt more successful. The promotion, the new salary, the beautiful girlfriend who understood his ambition. This was the life he'd always wanted, the life he deserved. "Babe, come look at this," Amber called from the living room. He found her on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through analytics for her TikTok account. "The house tour video just hit 3 million views," she said, grinning. "And I got 5 new brand deal inquiries today. FabFitFun wants to sponsor a video. Revolve is sending free clothes. HelloFresh is offering $2,000 for a kitchen integration." David kissed the top of her head. "That's amazing. I told you this would work." "We're a power couple," Amber said, tilting her head back to look at him. "You know that, right? Like people are watching us. We're building something real here." She wasn't wrong. David's professional network had expanded exponentially since he started dating Amber. Her 400,000 Instagram followers translated into visibility for him too. Clients who wanted to work with the company that employed the guy dating the lifestyle influencer. Speaking invitations. Podcast appearances. He was being seen. Finally. His phone buzzed with the text from his lawyer. "Sarah's attorney filed for another extension on the divorce proceedings," David read aloud. "Something about custody arrangements and financial discovery." Amber rolled her eyes. "She's stalling, trying to squeeze more money out of you." "There's no more money to squeeze. She's entitled to discovery. It's normal." "How much longer?" "Maybe 3 more months, but honestly, let her suffer a little. She'll take whatever we offer eventually. She always does." Amber smiled and returned to her laptop, already planning her next viral video. The wedding planning began in earnest in May. "I'm thinking the Edgewater," Amber said, flipping through venue brochures at their dining table. "Waterfront views, very Seattle. We could do golden hour photos on the pier." David looked at the pricing sheet and suppressed a wince. $75,000 for the venue alone. But Amber had convinced him that the wedding would be content gold. Sponsored posts, brand partnerships. They'd make the money back and then some. "Whatever you want," he said. "I also think we should upgrade the house," Amber continued. "The kitchen is fine, but it's not Instagram kitchen. I'm talking marble countertops, subway tile backsplash, brass fixtures. Very modern farmhouse." "How much are we talking?" 50,000, maybe 60. But think about it, babe. Every sponsored post I do in that kitchen translates to brand deals. It's an investment." David did the math in his head. The wedding, the renovations, the lifestyle they were building. His salary was good, but it wouldn't cover everything. They'd need to take out a loan, use Zahaway's savings, max out some credit cards. But it would be worth it. This was what success looked like. You had to spend money to make money. Everyone knew that. "Let's do it," he said. Amber squealed and threw her arms around him. "This is going to be amazing. We're going to have the most beautiful wedding, the most beautiful life." David believed her. Why wouldn't he? Everything was finally falling into place. Amber's beauty line launched in late May with significant fanfare. "Sinclair Skin," she announced in a glossy Instagram video. "Premium skincare for the modern woman. Because you deserve to glow." She'd convinced David to invest $200,000 in the venture, his savings plus a business loan. But the projections were solid. Her audience was engaged. The pre-orders had been strong. The products arrived from the manufacturer 2 weeks later. Generic white bottles with gold lettering. Moisturizer, serum, face masks. Nothing revolutionary, but the branding was sleek. The first reviews came in within days. Broke me out immediately. Smells like chemicals. Cheap formulation. Not worth the price. Then the one-star reviews flooded in. Then the angry customers demanding refunds. Then the think pieces about influencer scams and predatory marketing. Amber's comment sections turned vicious. Scammer. You burned us. Never trusting an influencer again. Her follower count started dropping. 390,000. 370,000. 350,000. Brand deals pulled out. Sponsorships evaporated. The money they'd spent on inventory sat in their garage in boxes, unsellable. David came home one evening to find Amber crying on the couch. It's ruined, she sobbed. My whole brand, my reputation, everything. We'll fix it, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. They just lost $200,000. The loan payments would start coming due. The wedding deposits were non-refundable. The kitchen renovation was half finished, and his company had just announced layoffs. I'm sorry, David, but we're restructuring. Your position is being eliminated. David sat in his boss's office, the words not quite making sense. Eliminated? But I just got promoted. The promotion was before the third quarter numbers came in. We're cutting costs across the board. You'll receive 3 months severance today. I'll write you a strong recommendation letter. 3 months severance. He'd budgeted for a $220,000 salary. Now he'd be making nothing, with a $75,000 wedding venue bill coming due, with loan payments on a failed beauty line, with renovation costs he couldn't stop now. He called Amber from the parking lot. They laid me off. Silence, then, what? Budget cuts. I'm out, effective immediately. But the wedding, the house, the money we owe. I know. David, we're fucked. We're completely fucked. That night, they had their first real fight. How did you not see this coming? Amber shouted. You said it would make millions. You had the business plan. I had projections. You're supposed to be the business expert. I believed in you. Well, maybe you should have believed in a prenup like I suggested. The words hung between them like broken glass. A prenup? David said slowly. Are you saying you want out? Amber's expression shifted, calculating. I'm saying we're not in the position I thought we'd be in when I agreed to marry you. Meaning? Meaning I need to think about my future, my brand, my career. And right now, being attached to you isn't helping any of those things. She went to bed in the guest room. David stayed up, scrolling through his phone, looking at job postings he wasn't qualified for and calculating debts he couldn't pay. His lawyer called the next morning. Good news, Sarah's agreed to finalize the divorce. Papers should be processed by end of week. You're almost free. David felt nothing resembling relief, just a hollow certainty that everything he'd built was collapsing around him. Great, he said. That's great. But it wasn't great. Nothing was great. He just didn't know yet how much worse it was about to get. Sarah marked June 1st on her calendar with a red pen. 1 month left. 30 days until the trust transferred. 30 days until she could stop pretending to be broke. 30 days until David discovered exactly what he'd thrown away. Your father wants you to know that the final paperwork is being prepared, Richard said during their weekly call. Everything's moved through probate faster than expected. Patricia's legal challenge was dismissed with prejudice. The judge called her claim frivolous and opportunistic. Sarah smiled despite herself. Patricia, her father's second wife, had tried to contest the will on grounds of diminished capacity. She'd argued that William had been unduly influenced by Sarah after his stroke. The judge hadn't been sympathetic. Once the divorce finalizes, Richard continued, we'll need to schedule the public announcement. Your father wants to do a formal press conference. Announce his retirement. Introduce you as the new CEO of Whitmore Holdings. How big of a news story will it be? Front page of Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. We're talking about one of the largest private transfers of wealth in recent history. And the daughter nobody knew existed taking over a multi-billion-dollar empire? That's a story that writes itself. Sarah looked around her tiny apartment. Generic furniture from IKEA, mismatched dishes, a leak in the bathroom ceiling that her landlord kept promising to fix. James slept in his crib, peaceful and unaware that his entire world was about to transform. I want the divorce finalized before any announcement, Sarah said. Not the same day, not the same week. I want it done, filed, official, and irreversible before David even knows what's happening. Smart. I'll coordinate with the court. We can push for expedited processing. How long? If everything goes smoothly, divorce finalized by June 15th. Trust transfer complete by June 20th. Press conference June 22nd. 1 week between divorce and revelation. 1 week for David to think he'd won before discovering he'd lost everything. Sarah allowed herself a moment of dark satisfaction. Let's do it. The divorce papers came through on June 14th. Official, stamped, final. Sarah Bennett Sterling was no longer married to David Sterling. She sat at her kitchen table holding the document, feeling nothing but cold certainty. 8 years of marriage dissolved in legal language and notary stamps. Her phone rang, David's number. She answered without speaking. It's done, David said. His voice was flat, exhausted. We're officially divorced. I know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about how it ended, about Christmas Eve. I was cruel. I shouldn't have done it like that. Sarah waited. Amber and I aren't working out, David continued. The business stuff got complicated. The wedding's probably off. Everything's kind of falling apart. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, well, I guess karma's real, right? He laughed bitterly. I left my pregnant wife for an Instagram model, and now I'm unemployed and broke. The universe has a sense of humor. It does, Sarah agreed quietly. For what it's worth, I hope you're doing okay. You and the baby. I saw in the court documents that you had a boy. James was. We're fine. Good, that's good. Okay, I guess this is it. Goodbye, Sarah. Goodbye, David. She hung up and immediately called her lawyer. File the name change paperwork. Effective immediately, Sarah Bennett Sterling is now legally Sarah Whitmore. Done. Anything else? Yes. Schedule the press conference for June 22nd. 9 a.m. Whitmore Holdings corporate office. Invite every major financial publication. This needs to be impossible to miss. Understood. Sarah? Yes? Congratulations. You made it. Sarah looked at her son sleeping peacefully. At the calendar marked with red ink, at the life she'd built from scraps while sitting on a fortune. Not yet, she said, but soon. June 22nd dawned clear and bright. Sarah woke at 5 a.m., fed James, and left him with the nanny she'd secretly hired 2 days earlier. The nanny had been thoroughly vetted, background checked, NDA signed. Everything from here would be public record. Sarah drove to Manhattan in a car service, also arranged quietly through Richard's office. She kept her Toyota Corolla to maintain appearances until the last possible moment. But today required a different kind of presence. The Whitmore Holdings building stood 60 stories tall in Midtown. Sarah had avoided coming here for 15 years. Now she walked through the lobby like she owned it. Because she did. Her father waited in the executive suite, standing with a cane but steady on his feet. Months of physical therapy had returned his strength. Sarah, he said softly, Dad. They'd had this conversation already. The apologies, the explanations, the careful rebuilding of trust between two stubborn people who'd both been wrong. But seeing him here in this context made it real. Are you ready? He asked. Yes. Patricia sent a message, said she hopes you fail spectacularly. Sarah smiled coldly. Patricia can watch me succeed spectacularly instead. The press conference room filled quickly. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNBC, local news, financial bloggers, everyone who mattered in the world of commercial real estate and high finance. Richard approached with a final briefing. Standard questions about your background, your plans for the company, your relationship with your father. We've prepared responses. Stay on message, professional, confident. Don't engage with anything personal. Understood. At 9 a.m. precisely, Sarah walked to the podium. Cameras flashed, murmurs rippled through the crowd. She wore a navy suit, simple jewelry, her hair professionally styled. She looked every inch the executive she was about to become. Good morning, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. I'm Sarah Whitmore, As of today, I am the CEO of Whitmore Holdings. The announcement dominated every financial news outlet within an hour. Manhattan real estate mogul William Whitmore announces retirement. Whitmore Holdings CEO transition. Daughter Sarah Whitmore takes helm. Meet Sarah Whitmore, the $2.3 billion heiress who's been hiding in plain sight. Bloomberg ran a profile with photos from the press conference. Sarah at the podium, confident and commanding. Sarah shaking hands with board members. Sarah standing beside her father, the passing of an empire captured in a single frame. Forbes published an analysis of the trust transfer, the timeline, the assets, the staggering scope of wealth-changing hands. Every major outlet picked up the story. Some mentioned Sarah's past, her mother's death, her estrangement from her father, her quiet life in Seattle. None of them mentioned David. Yet, David Sterling was eating cereal when his phone exploded. The first text came from Marcus, his college roommate. "Dude, is this your ex-wife?" Then Kevin from his old company. "Bro, dude, did you know?" Then his brother, his mother, three former co-workers, and a guy he'd played soccer with in high school. "Your ex is a billionaire?" David opened Bloomberg on his phone. The top story loaded slowly, probably because his internet was getting throttled for late payment. Then he saw the photo. Sarah. His Sarah, except not his anymore, and apparently never really his to begin with. She stood at a podium wearing a suit he had never seen, looking confident in a way she'd never looked when they were married. The headline read, "Sarah Whitmore assumes control of $2.3 billion real estate empire." His coffee mug slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor in slow motion, coffee spreading across the tile like spilled blood. "What?" He said the word out loud, to no one. "What?" Amber appeared from the bedroom, yoga mat in hand. "What's wrong?" David couldn't speak. He handed her the phone. Amber's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, horror, then calculation. "That's Sarah," she said slowly. "I know. Your ex-wife, Sarah." "I know. Sarah Whitmore. Your ex-wife is Sarah Whitmore. The Whitmore. The real estate Whitmore." David grabbed his laptop and started Googling frantically. Sarah Whitmore, Seattle. Sarah Bennett Whitmore. He cross-referenced old wedding photos with the Bloomberg images. It was her. "When did your divorce finalize?" Amber asked, her voice dangerously quiet. David pulled up the paperwork. "June 14th, 8 days ago." "Why?" Amber was already reading the Forbes article. "Ms. Whitmore assumed control of the family trust following a 6-month transition period that concluded this week." She read aloud. "The trust transferred on June 20th. The math assembled itself in David's brain like a car crash in slow motion. "I was married to her during the trust transfer," he said. "Yes." "Community property law? California?" "Yes." "If I'd still been married when she inherited, you'd be entitled to half of $2.3 billion. Amber's voice was mechanical. "That's $1.15 billion. With a B. David's legs gave out. He sat on the floor, surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee. "But I rushed the divorce," he said. "I pushed it for it to finalize quickly. Because you thought she was a broke art teacher trying to take your money." The full scope of his mistake crashed over him like a tsunami. "Oh my God, oh my God, I divorced a billionaire for you." Amber's expression went ice cold. "Excuse me? If I'd waited, if I'd just waited one more week." "You didn't know to wait, David. You didn't know because you never asked. You never saw her." "This is insane. This is insane." David was on his feet, pacing. "I need to call my lawyer. I can contest this. Fraud. She committed fraud by hiding her identity." Amber laughed without humor. "Yeah, I'm sure judges will love the argument that you would have stayed married if you'd known she was rich. That'll make you look great." David sank back down. The reality was settling in like concrete. He'd been married to Sarah Whitmore, actual billionaire Sarah Whitmore, and he'd left her on Christmas Eve while she was pregnant for an Instagram influencer with a failed beauty line. He'd thrown away more than $1 billion because he hadn't bothered to know his own wife. "I need to fix this," he said. "I need to call her, apologize, explain that if I'd known." If you'd known you would have what? Stayed with her? Amber's voice dripped with contempt. You want to call her and say, sorry I left you, but if I'd known you were rich, I would have stuck around. Do you hear yourself? David's phone kept buzzing, text after text, call after call. He opened Twitter and found his name trending. Man fumbles $1 billion on the 1-yard line. Point of view, you divorce your wife and she becomes a billionaire the next day. David Sterling's billion-dollar mistake. A thread. The internet was having a field day. His LinkedIn was flooded with messages, some mocking, some asking for interviews, one from a documentary filmmaker wanting to tell his story. His email was equally chaotic. Reporters requesting comment. Old acquaintances he hadn't spoken to in years suddenly interested in reconnecting. And through it all, Sarah's face on Bloomberg. Confident, successful, powerful. Everything he'd thought he wanted. Everything he'd been chasing with Amber and the lifestyle brand and the Instagram presence. She'd had it the whole time. She'd been sitting on an empire while he treated her like garbage. Amber was already packing. What are you doing? David asked. What does it look like? I'm leaving. You're leaving? Now? David, I attached myself to you because I thought you were successful, stable, going places. You're none of those things. You are unemployed, in debt, and you just became the most mocked man on the internet. My brand can't survive being associated with this disaster. Your brand. I invested everything in your brand. I lost my job because of your brand. And I lost my reputation because of your decisions. We're done. She pulled her suitcase from the closet, the same suitcase she'd rolled into this house 18 months ago, and started throwing clothes into it. David watched her pack, watched her take the throw pillow she'd bought, the coffee maker, the decorative items that had replaced Sarah's books and plants. Within 2 hours, Amber was gone. David sat alone in the house that used to be Sarah's, surrounded by empty rooms and broken dreams, and understood with perfect clarity that he'd destroyed his life for absolutely nothing. The meme started within hours. A TikTok user created a video showing David and Amber's Instagram posts side by side with Sarah's Bloomberg coverage. 3 million views in 24 hours. Explaining how David Sterling fumbled the bag of the century became a 12-part series from a financial advisor with 2 million followers. Lawyers weighed in with analysis of community property law. If he'd waited 48 more hours, he'd be entitled to half, one popular legal commentary account explained. This is a $1.15 billion mistake. YouTube think pieces multiplied. The psychology of status chasing, a cautionary tale. How one man's greed cost him everything. Sarah Whitmore, the ultimate revenge story. The hashtag David Sterling trended for 3 consecutive days. Twitter users were merciless. Imagine explaining to your future kids that you had $1 billion and traded it for Instagram likes. This man left a pregnant billionaire on Christmas Eve. The universe has a sense of humor, and her name is Sarah Whitmore. David's face became a meme. Screenshots from his old LinkedIn, photos Amber had posted of them together, always with captions highlighting his catastrophic mistake. Reporters camped outside his apartment building. He couldn't leave without cameras in his face. Mr. Sterling, do you regret your decision? David, did you know your wife was wealthy? Any comment on the divorce timing? He stopped answering, stopped going outside, ordered groceries for delivery, and watched his life become a cautionary tale in real time. Meanwhile, Sarah's star rose. Forbes ran a cover story, "The Heiress Who Chose Herself." Wall Street Journal published a profile. Sarah Whitmore's strategic patience. Good Morning America invited her for an interview. She declined, but the segment ran anyway. Billion-dollar divorce mistake. How one woman's silence became her power. Women's business conferences requested her as a speaker. TED wanted her for a talk. Harvard Business School asked her to guest lecture. The narrative crystallized quickly. Woman told she wasn't enough reveals she never needed validation. Sarah handled it all with professional grace. She gave no interviews about David, made no public comments about her marriage, simply focused on her work at Whitmore Holdings, which made the contrast even more devastating. David, unemployed and mocked. Sarah, celebrated and powerful. David, desperately trying to explain himself to anyone who would listen. Sarah, declining all personal interviews and letting her success speak for itself. The optics couldn't have been worse for David. Amber characteristically pivoted fast. She posted an emotional YouTube video 3 days after the news broke. I was manipulated too, my truth about David Sterling. Sitting on a couch, minimal makeup, looking vulnerable and honest, she told her story. He told me his ex was toxic, controlling, holding him back from his potential. I believed him because I had no reason not to. I thought I was helping someone escape an unhealthy marriage. She wiped away tears. I had no idea who Sarah really was. He clearly didn't either. And now people are calling me a homewrecker and a gold digger, but I'm a victim here too. I trusted a man who didn't even know his own wife. How could I have known what he didn't know? The comments section filled with support. She's right, he played both of them. Amber deserves better too. The real villain is the man who couldn't see value in either woman. Within a week, Amber's follower count was back up, 600,000, growing daily. She launched a podcast called Red Flags and Receipts about toxic relationships and learning to spot manipulative men. The first episode, when he leaves his pregnant wife on Christmas. She never said David's name, didn't need to, everyone knew. The podcast hit #3 on Apple's charts. Amber not only survived the scandal, she thrived on it, turned herself from villain to victim to survivor. Monetized the entire experience. She sent Sarah's assistant a direct message. No hard feelings. He played us both. Hope the empire treats you well. Sarah saw it, considered responding, decided against it. Amber was smart, adaptable. She'd land on her feet. David wouldn't. David's desperate media tour began in late June. He accepted an interview with a morning talk show desperate for ratings. David, thank you for coming on, the host said. I think everyone's wondering, did you know? Of course I didn't know. David's voice was defensive, angry. She lied to me. She used a fake name. She used her mother's maiden name. That's not illegal. It's deceptive. She knew exactly what she was doing. But sir, you left her. You filed for divorce. You chose to end the marriage. Because I didn't know she was, the host interrupted smoothly. Rich, so you're saying if you'd known she had money, you would have stayed? David's face went red. No, that's not, because that's what this sounds like. You're upset you left someone who turned out to be wealthy. The studio audience murmured, not sympathetic sounds. She manipulated me. The timing is too convenient. The trust transfer timeline is public record. It was 6 months due to probate law, not her choice. David stood up, ripped off his microphone. This is bullshit. He walked off set. The clip went mega viral. Man walks off set when called out played on loop across social media. His final attempt was a podcast interview with a true crime host who'd pivoted to covering social scandals. Do you feel you deserve any of her inheritance? The host asked. I supported her for 8 years, David said. She worked. She paid half the bills, according to court documents. I gave her a life in a townhouse she could have bought with pocket change if she'd wanted to. She should have told me. Why? Would it have changed how you treated her? Long pause, too long. Yes, I would have respected her more. The host just stared at him. David realized what he'd said. Wait, that came out wrong. Too late. He would have respected her more if he knew she had money trended for 48 hours. Think pieces appeared everywhere. David Sterling and the problem was status-based respect. Why men like David Sterling think wealth equals worth. The quiet cruelty of conditional love. David's former company issued a statement. Mr. Sterling resigned to pursue other opportunities. We wish him well in his future endeavors. He was unemployable, toxic, a walking cautionary tale. His lawyer stopped returning calls. His brother called to say their mother was embarrassed. Old friends unfollowed him on social media. He sat in his empty apartment, the furniture gone because Amber had bought most of it and taken it when she left, eating takeout on the floor, and watched news coverage of Sarah's glamorous press appearances. He'd lost everything, and the worst part was knowing it was entirely his own fault. 6 weeks after the announcement, Sarah received a message from building security. Ms. Whitmore, there's a David Sterling in the lobby. He's requesting to see you. No appointment. Sarah sat in her corner office 60 stories above Manhattan and considered her options. She could have security remove him, could ignore him completely, could maintain the professional distance she'd carefully cultivated, or she could face him. One final time. Let him up, she said. Her assistant looked surprised. Are you sure? Yes, I need to do this. David looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His suit was rumpled, like he'd been wearing it for days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His normally carefully styled hair was messy. He stopped in the doorway of her office, taking in the massive space. Floor-to-ceiling windows, original artwork. The view of the city spread out below like a kingdom. Nice place, he said. His voice was rough. David, Sarah remained seated behind her desk. Professional, cool. What can I do for you, Joe? You could start by explaining why you lied to me for 8 years. I didn't lie, you never asked. I asked about your family. You said your father was in real estate. He is. You didn't say he was William Whitmore. You used a fake name. Sarah stood, her patience already fraying. Bennett was my mother's maiden name. I legally changed it after she died because I wanted distance from my father. I met you as Sarah Bennett. That wasn't deception. That was self-preservation. You let me think you were nobody, Sarah's voice rose. I was nobody to you, David. That's the point. When you thought I was just a teacher, I wasn't worth respecting. I wasn't worth staying faithful to. I wasn't worth keeping. That's not fair. You left me 7 months pregnant on Christmas Eve, Sarah was shouting now. Months of controlled fury finally breaking free. You brought your girlfriend to my house and told me to pack my things. You filmed it. You humiliated me online. And you did all of that when you thought I had nothing. So tell me, David, what would have been different if you'd known? Silence filled the office. David's shoulders sagged. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I would have stayed. Exactly. You would have stayed for the money. Not for me, not for our baby, for the lifestyle. For the status. So this was all revenge? Sarah shook her head, suddenly tired. No, this was survival. You think I wanted to spend 6 months living in poverty while sitting on billions? You think I enjoyed watching you parade Amber around while I was pumping breast milk in a 1-bedroom apartment? You could have told me. When, David? When you handed me divorce papers? When you called me worthless? When Amber posted videos mocking my clothes, my hair, my home? David ran a hand through his hair. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Yes, and consequences are what teach us not to make them again. So you're just ruining my life? Sarah walked to the window, looking out at the city. I'm not ruining your life, David. I'm just not saving it. There's a difference. She turned back to face him. You want to know the really sad part? I would have given you money. If you'd left me with kindness, if you'd said, Sarah, I'm unhappy, I want a divorce, let's do this respectfully, I would have helped you, set you up, made sure you were okay. But I didn't know. Exactly, Sarah's voice cracked. You didn't know I had money, so you treated me like garbage. You showed me your true character, and now you're furious that your cruelty cost you a fortune. David sat down heavily in one of her office chairs, put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I was an asshole. I was wrong. I treated you horribly. I see that now. Do you see it, or do you just see the price tag? Both. He looked up, and there were actual tears in his eyes. I see both, and I hated myself for it. The honesty surprised her. Sarah's anger cooled slightly. David, you're not a monster. You're just a man who was so obsessed with looking successful that you couldn't see what you actually had. I wasn't exciting enough. I wasn't Instagram perfect. I was just me, and that wasn't enough for you. It should have been, David said quietly. Yes, it should have been. Long silence. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, 2 people who'd once loved each other sat with the wreckage of what they'd become. Can I ask you something? David said finally. What? Why did you wait? Why didn't you just tell me immediately and watch me squirm? Why spend 6 months suffering? Sarah returned to her desk, sat down, folded her hands carefully. Because if I'd revealed everything immediately, you would have fought me in court, claimed you deserved half because I hid assets. It would have been years of litigation. This way, the money was legally mine before the divorce finalized. Clean, uncontestable. David let out a bitter laugh. So you played me? No, I just didn't interrupt while you played yourself. He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry. About Christmas. About Amber. About all of it. I know you are. Does that change anything? No, sorry doesn't undo what you did. It just means you finally understand what you lost. David nodded, turned to leave. He's beautiful, by the way, he said softly. Our son. I saw pictures online. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Yes, he is. Would you ever let me meet him? Sarah considered this. The man who'd abandoned them, the father who hadn't been there, the human being who was genuinely trying to do better. When you're ready to be a father, not when you're ready to perform being one, call my lawyer, we'll arrange supervised visits. But David, her voice turned cold, if you hurt him the way you hurt me, I will make what happened to you look like mercy. I understand. He left. Sarah sat alone in her office. No triumphant music, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. She'd won. But winning felt a lot like losing, just with better furniture. 3 months later, the dust had settled into new patterns. David Sterling worked at a mid-level marketing firm in Tacoma. The salary was $85,000, less than half what he'd made before. The apartment was a studio in a less desirable neighborhood. The car was a 10-year-old Honda. He attended court-ordered co-parenting classes every Tuesday evening. They taught him about communication and boundaries and putting the child's needs first. Things he should have known already, but hadn't bothered to learn. Supervised visits with James happened twice a month, 1 hour each time. A social worker sat in the corner taking notes while David played with the blocks and tried to connect with a toddler who didn't know him. It was humbling, humiliating even. It was also necessary. His therapist, also court-mandated, helped him understand the narcissism that had driven his choices, the insecurity masked by ambition, the way he'd measured his worth by external validation. You didn't leave Sarah because she wasn't enough, the therapist said during one session. You left because you didn't think you were enough. And instead of doing the work to feel worthy, you found someone who made you feel important. David was learning, slowly, painfully, but learning. He deleted all social media, stopped reading articles about himself, focused on being present for the small life he was rebuilding. It wasn't the life he'd imagined, but it was real. And maybe that mattered more. Amber Sinclair's podcast had 2 million downloads and climbing. She'd pivoted from lifestyle influencer to relationship expert, chronicling her journey from toxic situationship survivor to empowered single woman. Her book, Upgrade: How I Survived the Sterling Scandal, hit the New York Times bestseller list. She was dating a venture capitalist now. No social media posts about him. She'd learned that lesson. But people who followed her closely noted the designer bags, the expensive restaurants, the subtle flex of a life upgraded once again. She occasionally referenced my ex's ex-wife in interviews, always with respect. Sarah Whitmore's goals, she said on a women's empowerment panel. She knew her worth even when no one else did. That's the energy we should all aspire to. It was savvy, self-aware, good for her brand. Amber had turned controversy into currency. She was fine. She'd always be fine. Sarah Whitmore's life transformed in ways both public and private. Whitmore Holdings thrived under her leadership. She implemented new policies around affordable housing development, converted luxury units into family housing, established scholarship programs for single mothers pursuing business degrees. The press loved it. Billionaire with a heart. Sarah Whitmore, capitalism with compassion. But the changes weren't for press. They were personal. She knew what it felt like to be pregnant and scared and broke. Knew the desperation of choosing between diapers and dinner. Knew the weight of doing it alone. If her wealth could ease that burden for other women, then maybe the suffering had meant something. In August, she bought David's foreclosed townhouse at auction, the house where he'd humiliated her. Where Amber had filmed her mockery, Sarah demolished it. In its place, she built the Evelyn Bennett Memorial Housing Complex, 24 units of affordable family housing. Named after her mother, the grand opening was covered by every Seattle news outlet. Where Billionaire was humiliated, she now provides hope, read one headline. Sarah stood at the ribbon cutting, visibly pregnant with her second child, and spoke about second chances and choosing compassion over cruelty. The address where David had destroyed her life was now a place where struggling families could build theirs. It felt like poetry, like justice, like healing. She gave birth to her daughter in February, 8 pounds, 3 ounces, healthy and loud and perfect. This time she wasn't alone. Her father was there. Richard, the nanny who'd become like family, a circle of support she'd built carefully. David sent flowers to the hospital. White roses with a card that read, "Congratulations, she's lucky to have you." Sarah kept the card, not out of sentiment, just as a reminder of how far they'd both come. The supervised visits continued. David was consistent, which surprised her. Every other Sunday, without fail, he showed up sober, prepared, genuinely trying. James was starting to recognize him, called him Dada now, ran to him with chubby toddler legs during visits. It wasn't the family Sarah had imagined, but it was a family of sorts, broken and rebuilt, different but functional. "How's he doing?" Sarah asked the social worker after one visit. "Better, he's engaged, present, follows all the guidelines. I think we could potentially move to unsupervised visits in 6 months if this continues." Sarah nodded. "Keep the supervision for now, but thank you for the update." She wanted David to be a good father. Not for David, for James. Every child deserved a parent who showed up. On a Tuesday evening in September, Sarah sat in her Tribeca penthouse, daughter asleep in her arms, watching James play with blocks on the floor. Her father called. "The board voted," he said. "They want to rename the foundation after you, the Sarah Whitmore Foundation for Women and Families." "No," Sarah said immediately. "Keep it as Whitmore Holdings. This isn't about me." "It absolutely is about you. It's about the work. The work is what matters." Her father chuckled. "You sound like your mother." "Good." After they hung up, Sarah looked around her home, not ostentatious, comfortable, filled with baby toys and books and warmth. She'd won. In every measurable way, she'd won. But she'd also learned that winning isn't the same as healing, that revenge isn't the same as peace, that getting everything you wanted doesn't fill the holes left by what you lost. She was wealthy, powerful, successful. She was also scarred, careful, still learning to trust. The money hadn't fixed her. The victory hadn't healed her, but time might, and love, and the work of building something meaningful from the ruins of what she'd survived. That was enough. For now, it was enough. The Plaza Hotel glittered like a constellation had fallen to earth. Sarah Whitmore stood backstage at the Whitmore Foundation's annual gala, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other smoothing her dress. 18 months since that first press conference. 18 months of building and healing and learning to be the woman she'd always had the potential to become. "5 minutes, Miss Whitmore," a production assistant said. Sarah nodded, took a breath, prepared herself. The ballroom was filled with Manhattan's elite, philanthropists, business leaders, politicians, the same people who'd once looked through her when she was just Sarah Bennett, art teacher. Now they paid $50,000 a plate to hear her speak. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her father sat in the front row, recovered and proud. Her children were with the nanny in a private room nearby. James, almost 2 years old now. Her daughter Emma, 8 months. And somewhere in the back, because Patricia had invited him in a misguided attempt at reconciliation, was David Sterling. Sarah had known he'd be here, had prepared for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sarah Whitmore." She walked to the podium. The applause was immediate, genuine. She waited for it to fade. "1 year ago," she began, her voice clear and strong, "I stood in a hospital room alone on Christmas, holding my premature son. I had just been divorced, humiliated online. Called worthless by a man who'd promised to love me forever. The room was silent, listening. In that moment, I had two choices: reveal who I really was and destroy him immediately, or wait and see if the universe has a sense of poetic justice. A few knowing laughs rippled through the crowd. I chose patience, not because I wanted revenge, though I won't lie and say it didn't feel good, but because I needed to know something. I needed to know if he would treat me differently if he knew, if my value would suddenly increase because of my bank account. Sarah paused. Let the weight of that sink in. The answer was yes, and that taught me everything. She looked directly at the cameras streaming the event live. My mother, Evelyn Bennett, used to say, "Money doesn't make you powerful, knowing yourself does." I spent 10 years hiding from wealth because I was afraid it would change me. Then I spent 6 months hiding my wealth because someone else had already changed me. Made me feel small, worthless, invisible. Her voice strengthened. But here's what I learned. Power isn't about money, it's about choice. I chose to walk away from billions at 21. I chose to walk back at 36. Both times it was my choice. Nobody took that from me. She looked around the room, at faces she recognized, at people who doubted her, underestimated her, ignored her. So to every woman who's been told she's not enough, you are. With or without the money, the status, the Instagram followers, the ring, you are enough. And when you know that, truly know it, that's when you're truly wealthy. The standing ovation was immediate, thunderous. Sarah stepped down from the podium, cradling her pregnant belly, and let herself feel the moment. She'd survived, more than survived. She'd transformed her pain into purpose. After the gala, Sarah stepped outside for air. Snow was falling softly on Fifth Avenue. String lights turned the city into something magical, the kind of night that belonged in movies. That was a beautiful speech. She turned. David stood a few feet away, hesitantly. "Thank you," Sarah said. I saw Jamie today during the visit. He said dada and then tried to teach me how to stack blocks." Sarah smiled slightly. "He's very particular about his block stacking technique." "I noticed." David moved closer. "Thank you for letting me be part of his life. I know I don't deserve it." "You're his father. He deserves to know you, the real you, not the man you pretended to be." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just present. "Boy or girl?" David asked, gesturing to her belly. "This one?" "Girl, due in February." "That's wonderful. Congratulations, really." "Thank you." David shoved his hands in his pockets. He looked different. Older. Humbler. More real. "I saw the housing project, Bennett Memorial. That was our house." "Yes." "You tore it down." "I built something better." David nodded slowly, accepting this. "I've been going to therapy. Court mandated, but it's helping. I'm learning about narcissism, insecurity, all the things I was too proud to admit." "That's good. That's important." "My therapist asked me something last week. She said, if you could go back to Christmas Eve, knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently?" Sarah waited. "I said I'd choose you, but she pointed out that I'd only choose you because I know now, not because I loved you then." The honesty surprised Sarah. David had never been good at honesty. "And?" she prompted. "And she's right. I didn't love you the way you deserved. I love the idea of success more than I love my wife. That's something I have to live with." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. Not with hate, not with love, just with clarity about who he was and what he'd done. "David, I don't hate you anymore. I also don't forgive you. What you did was cruel. The consequences, me getting my inheritance right after our divorce, that was timing. But the pain you caused, that was your choice. I know. I hope you find someone who sees you the way you couldn't see me. I genuinely mean that. I hope you learn to love someone for who they are, not what they represent." "What about you? Are you seeing anyone?" Sarah smiled. "That's none of your business." "Fair. Can I ask you one last thing?" "What?" "If I'd stayed, if I'd been faithful, if we were still married when your father got sick, would you have told me?" Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. "Yes," she said finally, Because the man I married, the one I thought I married, would have deserved to know, but you weren't that man anymore. Maybe you never were. David nodded, accepted it. I should go. Congratulations again. On everything. He walked away into the snowy Manhattan night, alone, but walking with more purpose than before. Sarah watched him leave, then turned back to the gala. The warmth, the light, her life. Inside, her father was holding James, who'd been brought down from the private room. Mama, James shouted, reaching for her. Sarah took her son, held him close, and felt the baby in her belly kick. Your mother would be proud, her father said quietly. I hope so. She looked around the ballroom, the empire she now controlled, the life she'd rebuilt from nothing. Everyone survived. Nobody's perfect. Life went on. And sometimes, if you were patient enough, the universe had a sense of poetic justice after all. 2 years later, Sarah Whitmore sat in her office reviewing proposals for the foundation's expansion into affordable childcare centers. Her assistant knocked. Ms. Whitmore, David Sterling is here. He has an appointment. Sarah looked up, surprised. He does? Yes, ma'am, 4 p.m. It's been on the calendar for 2 weeks. Sarah pulled up her schedule. There it was. David Sterling, employment inquiry. Send him in. David entered, clean-shaven, professional suit, carrying a portfolio. Thank you for seeing me, he said. I didn't know I was seeing you. My assistant scheduled this. I called 6 times, left voicemails. Finally, someone agreed to put me on your calendar. I think they thought I was someone else. Sarah almost smiled. What do you want, David? A job. She stared at him. I've been working in marketing for the past 2 years. Small firms, getting my footing. I'm good at it, really good. And I've been following the Whitmore Foundation's work, the housing initiative, the scholarship programs, the child care centers you're planning. It's incredible work. He opened his portfolio. I put together a proposal for a marketing campaign, something that reaches the communities you're trying to serve, not top-down charity messaging, ground-level, authentic community engagement. He slid the proposal across her desk. Sarah flipped through it. It was good, genuinely good. Why, she asked. Because I want to do meaningful work. Because I'm good at this. Because I want to be part of something bigger than myself. He paused. And because I want my kids to see their father do something worth respecting. Kids, plural. Emma calls you mama, David said quietly. Jamie talks about you constantly. They're growing up watching you build something that matters. I want them to be proud of me too. Sarah closed the portfolio. I'll have HR review this. If they think it has merit, you'll go through the standard interview process. No special treatment. You'll be judged like any other applicant. That's all I'm asking. David stood to leave. David? He turned. This doesn't change anything between us. You understand that? I do. Good. After he left, Sarah opened the proposal again, read it carefully. It was good, very good. She buzzed her assistant. Send this to HR. Tell them I want it evaluated fairly. Yes, ma'am. Sarah returned to her work. The proposals, the budgets, the endless decisions of running an empire. Outside her window, Manhattan glittered in the afternoon sun. She was Sarah Whitmore, CEO, mother, survivor, builder, and she was finally, truly free.